We welcome everyone to today's edition of the Wednesday class from ISKCON of Silicon Valley. At ISKCON of Silicon Valley, we have programs 3 times a week, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sundays. We get together and we have uh, Krishna Katha and discussions. And so this is the Wednesday edition, which is online. So So before we begin, we will actually start with the Mangalachan prayers, which are basically prayers to a spiritual master and all the teachers in the disciplic succession, so that whatever we speak today will be of some use and for our own purification. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagarajata Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Matsamo nasti papatma naparadhi च कश्चन parihare pilajjame kim bruve purushottama yuvatinam yatha yoni yunam cha yuvato yatha manobhiramate tadvan mano me ramatam tvayi भूमौ स्खलितपादानां भूमेरेवावलम्बनम् त्वयि जाता पराधानां त्वम् एव शरणं प्रभो गोविन्द वल्लभे राधे प्रार्थये त्वामहं सदा त्वदीयमिति जानातु गोविन्दो मां त्वया सह राधे वृन्दावनाधीशे करुणामृतवाहिनी कृपया निज पादाब्ज दास्यं मह्यं प्रदीयताम् हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So we welcome you all once again. So today we are going to talk from the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago in a setting which is a battlefield setting. So it's a talk. It's part of the Mahabharata. The talk is between two personalities, Krishna and Arjun. So Krishna is none other than the supreme personality of Godhead, as has been revealed in many of our scriptures. and has also been confirmed by all the great sages throughout the ages. And Narada, Vyasa, Asita, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, as well as Madhvacharya, Yamunacharya, and many others who are eminent sages. Um, and Arjuna is in a difficult situation. He is uh, he's arrayed in front of um, his brothers, who are the Kauravas, and this is on a battlefield where two armies um, are facing each other, sort of a standoff situation. And Arjuna is perplexed in the situation. He basically there has a lot that has gone, and before that, um, Arjuna and his brothers were poisoned by the other party. They fed him. They fed Bhima a poisoned cake, and they tried to uh, burn the Pandavas in a lakh house, and so on and so forth. A lot of atrocities that were committed on them by the other party, who unceremoniously and unethically and unrighteously, rather, tried to usurp the throne, which was supposed and rightfully the claim of the Pandavas. And they were so hell-bent that the war was the only rightful solution at that point of time. And so Arjuna is in this situation. This brings us to the point where Bhagavad Gita actually starts. It consists of 700 verses and 18 chapters. So Arjuna is in such a position that the uh, his lips are quivering, and the bow, the Gandiva bow, which he had, that is slipping from his hand, and he sits down on his chariot. He is having a breakdown, and it's just not possible for him, because on the other side there were his brothers-in-law, and then there were his teacher, his preceptor, his gurus, and then there were his great grandfather and all his relatives, and they were all arrayed just because there was this other personality called Duryodhan who wanted this war. And he was unrighteously usurping the throne, which was rightfully the claim of the Pandavas. So this brings us to the position where Bhagavad Gita starts. And before we go more into the Bhagavad Gita, need we say the Bhagavad Gita is one of the most widely is the most widely read literature by all Hindus throughout the whole world, and it's particularly with the efforts of the founder Acharya of ISKCON, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The message of the Bhagavad Gita has been spread all over the whole world, and it's gaining more and more popularity in the Western countries. So many eminent scholars have also they also read the Bhagavad Gita, like Gandhi, Thoreau, Emerson, George Harrison from the Beatles, and so on and so forth. And so today we will be especially reading the 16th chapter of this Bhagavad Gita. So the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is titled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, or otherwise called Daivasura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga. So in this chapter, Krishna basically delineates the divine and the demonic natures, as the title itself says. And we'll go a little bit of a deep dive. But before that, we just want to say a few words about something called CHAD, or a chapter a day. CHAD stands for chapter a day. It's basically, as my spiritual master likes to call it, it's an underground organization where the devotees who are members of this organization, they meet every day, and they recite a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, or either online, or on Zoom, or by themselves, whichever way one prefers. And there is a chat calendar that circulates, where all the members, they recite a particular chapter on that particular day. So currently it's the 16th chapter, which is being recited in the chat calendar. So we will also do chant for the 16th chapter, and we'll also take up verses 1 to 3 for today's discussion. So a few more words about my realizations of doing chant. My spiritual master was once asked this question by some other counselors who counsel other devotees. So how to manage that time when the counselees have a lot of questions about the various aspects of devotional service, and the response of my spiritual master was to ask them to do chant, because when we do chant every day, when we read one chapter a day, either one chapter a day means either all the verses or all the translations or the verses and translations. So what one would start to notice is the verses start to stick, and every now and then the verses will start coming, and they'll especially come when we need them the most. Um, for example, if one is traveling on the 101 freeway and then somebody just decides to cut one off without an indicator, or without there isn't sufficient space, would just squeeze in and then on top of it slam on the brakes or something. uh, the feeling one would get is that of anger, that momentary anger that comes in, and so at that time one can remember, for example, a verse from the Bhagavad Gita: Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajaguna Samuddhava, Mahashana, Mahapatma, Vidhi Inam, Varinam. It's lust only, Arjuna, which gets transformed into Wrath, which is all devouring enemy of the living entity. So, so this then at least there will be some sort of, okay, I'm not supposed to get angry, or I need to get that under control, and that sort of helps. This is just one example. One can see over and over again how just by reading the Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge that is contained will come to our help, especially when we need them the most. As it is said, Neha Vikrama Azosti Patyavana Vidyate Swalpamapi Asya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. Trayate Mahato Bhayat, which means it saves one from the most dangerous type of fear. So, especially the most dangerous type of fear is death. And uh, as everybody who is a practitioner in Krishna consciousness is preparing for that ultimate exam. So this sort of just bathing one's intellect every day. It's basically doing a chapter a day. Also, I think, Krishna says it's worshipping Krishna with one's intelligence. So, so with that prelude, we'll start uh, the chapter a day, the chapter 16. So we'll do the verses and we'll do the translation one after another. So chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Avayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyaga Shantirapeshunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardhavam Hera Chapalam Teja Kshama Dhriti Saucham Adroha Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivam Abhijatasya Bharata. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy. and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. दम्भोदर्पो अभिमानश्च क्रोधपारुष्यमेव च अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य पार्थसम्पदमासुरीम्. Pride, arrogance, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, the son of Pritha. Daivi sampad vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata masucha sampadam daivim abhijatosi pandava. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin daiva sura eva cha daivo vistarasah prokta asuram partha me shrunu. O son of Pritha, in this world there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demoniac. Pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidurashura na saucham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Asatyam apratishtam te jagad ahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama hetukam. They say that this world is unreal with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Etam drishtim avastabhya nastat mano alpabuddhayah prabhavanti ugrakarmanah shayaya jagato hitah. Following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost to themselves, who have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Kamam ashritya dushpuram dambhamanamadhanvita mohad grihitva sadgrahan pravartante suchivratah. Taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac, thus illusion, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. Chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantamupashritaः कामोपभोगपरमा एतावादिति निश्चिताः आशापाशसतैर्बद्धा कामक्रोधपरायणाः इहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसंशयान्. The belief that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds of thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Idam adya maya labdhvam imam prapshamanoratham idam asti idam api me bhavishyati punardhanam asau maya hata satrur hanishye chaparanapi ishwaroham maham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi आद्योऽभिजनवानस्मि पुण्योऽस्ति सदृशो मया यक्षे दास्यामि मोदस्य iti ajnana vimohitaah. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices, I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Aneka chitta vibhranta moha jala samavrita prasakta kama bhogeshu patanti narakesu chau. Thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. Atma sambhavita stabdha dhana mana madanvita yajante nama yajyaiste dambhe na vidhi purvakam. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samsrita mam atma paradeheshu pradvishanto abhishuyaka. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. Tan aham dushatah kruran samsareshu naradhaman Shipami ajasram asubhan asureshu eva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence into various demoniac species of life. Asurim yonimapanna mudha janmani janmani mam aprapyaiva kaunteya tato yanti adhamam gatem. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Trividham narakasyedam dwaram nasanam atmanah kamah krodha tatha lobhas tasmad etat trayam tajet. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give this up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय तमोद्वारे स्त्रिभिर्नरः आचरति आत्मनः श्रेयस्ततो याति param gatim. The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. यह शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिमवाप्नोति न सुखं न परां गतिम्. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vivastitau gyatva sastra vidhanuktam karma kartumi harhasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Okay, so what we are going to do today is we will actually recite this very, very nice bhajan, which is called Bhaja Hure Mana. It is written by Govinda Das, who is one of the great saints and very wonderful devotional poet. Then we'll go to the 16th chapter, first verse, and we will read some of that. So, and then if time permits, today is also the, not today, it's Friday, coming Friday, there's going to be appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we'll try to read something about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is the spiritual master of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He's one of the acharyas in our line. We can read something about his life. Okay, so before we recite, we just wanted to go through this to understand what this is, what this song is about. So it starts with Bhaja Hure Mana. Bhaja means to worship. It comes from the Bhaj Dhatu. Hu means like saying hello. Bhaja Hure Mana. Mana means my mind. So so the poet here, Govinda Das, is saying that, oh my mind, you please worship Sri Nanda Nandana, Sri Nanda Nanda Maharaj. Nanda means Nanda Maharaj is the father of Krishna, foster father of Krishna, and Nandan means the son of Nanda Maharaj. Nanda Maharaj is Krishna. So Bhaja Hure Mana Sri Nanda Nandana, because Why the mana? Because from the Bhagavad Gita we see that the mind is very fickle. Mind, Krishna Arjuna says actually, to control the mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. And Krishna says that the mind is, to one who has controlled the mind is the best of friends. And if not, then the mind is the worst of enemies. So, so one has to make the mind one's friend. So here Govinda Das is sort of admonishing the mind that, oh my mind, please worship Sri Nanda Nandana. Sri Nanda Nandana is again Krishna. And we're taking shelter of Abhaya Charanara Vindare. Abhaya means fearless. Why? The lotus feet of Krishna are fearless. So there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which states that anyone who, so devotees who take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, the entire material world that gets transformed as small as the water that is contained in the hoof print of a calf. So Abhaya Charana Ravindare. The Charana means feet and Aravinda means lotus flower. So Krishna's feet is compared to like a lotus flower. So Bhaja Hure Mana Abhaya Sri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Durlabha Manava Janma. So the word Durlabh, Labha means something which is available, and Dur means difficult. So this human birth is very, very difficult to attain. So why is it difficult to attain? Because our Shastras say that one attains this human body after going through 8,064,000 lives, 864,000 lives, lives in a sense, the species of life one has to go through, and then finally one attains this human form of life. It is the Vedic aphorism, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. It starts with, therefore, Brahma Jigyasa means you inquire about the absolute truth. So nothing starts with therefore. So why therefore? Therefore means here that therefore, because you have attained this human form of life, therefore inquire for this, about this absolute truth. Because animals cannot inquire. Animals are busy with these four things: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They search for food. They are very good at sleeping. For example, the polar bears, they sleep for 6 months at a time. Mating, the pigeon can mate 16 times an hour. And defending, the lion and the tiger, they have every animal has a unique way of defending. So if human beings also do these four things, then there is no difference between human beings and animals. So human being is meant for doing something different. And that's why here the poet Govindas is saying, Durlava Manava Janama Satsange. Satsange means association. So association of devotees. Satam prasangat mama veera samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha. Tad joshanad api apavargavatmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. So this is a verse which comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which means that here Kapil Dev is saying that, now he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's saying that my devotees, when they hear Mama Virya Samvido, Mama Virya means when they hear, Mama, he says mine, when they hear about my heroic activities, this is like Rasayana Katha, this is like nectar to their ears. And by this process of hearing, when the devotees come together and they hear about Krishna and his wonderful activities, then gradually they make advancement towards the ultimate goal of life. And there, Govinda Das is saying, Taroho e bhavo sindhu re. So bhava sindhu, so the material world is many times in the scriptures compared to an ocean. Now an ocean, we have seen here in Northern California, we have seen the Pacific Ocean. It's huge. It's as far, if you go to any of the beaches, or so you can see that as far as we can see, there is ocean, there's blue water, the sky and the ocean meet. Now, no matter how expert a swimmer someone is, No one can claim that he or she can swim all across the ocean, because the ocean is so huge. And what to speak of all the various sharks and other kinds of creatures who are in that ocean. So the material world is compared to such kind of a Bhavasindhu or ocean, where it's very difficult for a person to cross on its own. But if one takes a shelter of Abhay Charanaravinda, which is Krishna's lotus feet, then it becomes, as we quoted earlier, the verse, the entire material world becomes as small as the hoofprint of a calf, as the water contained in the hoofprint of a calf, and one can just jump over. So the material world is also sometimes compared to a blazing forest fire. So that brings us to the next part, Sita Atapa Bata Barishana. So in Northern California, we are we have seen so many times in 2020 and other years, there have been such massive fires, literally moving at 2 football speeds a minute, and really incredible speeds. And it's there are incredible videos where everybody had to rush out. It's like day turns into night, and every experienced firefighter will tell you the importance of a marine layer. Marine layer is that amount of um, the water that's just suspended in the air, sort of like a fog. Once that comes in, uh, that's it. The they the firefighters otherwise had to push in all the helicopters and the firefighting aircraft and whatnot, and thousands of firefighters really working day and night to control the fire from spreading. But once there is a rain, that's it. That's it. No need to do anything. That's it. They can pack their bags and go. So we sing this in the morning. Samsara dava nalalidha loka tranaya karunya ghana ghanatvam. So the spiritual master's mercy is compared to that rain that comes in, which helps us from um, from this davanal, or this uh, davanal means raging fire, not just a simple fire, raging fire. And yeah, so then in the second paragraph, he goes on to say that the what is the situation in the material world. Sita Atapa. Sita means too much cold. Atapa means too much heat. So much heat that the soil just cracks open, lack of water. Bata, strong winds, and Barisana, a lot of rain. Edina Jamini Jagire, and then the living entities, they spend the days and nights, sleepless nights, going to the bottom of the ocean or to the edge of space, and then doing whatever they do day in and day out. And then he says, Bifale Sevinu Kripana Durjana. Bifale means it's a waste. Sevinu means to serve. Kripana means misers. And Durjana, Dur is somebody who is, Jana means people and Dur means bad. So Kripana, the misers who are have been serving wastelessly, um, um, baselessly, people who have uh, who do not want, have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. And what for? Chapala sukha lagire. Chapala sukha. Chapala means a fleeting. It's just there and next moment it's gone. Chapala sukha labha lagire. So just to get this Chapala sukha, I have been serving Skripana Durjanas, people, the miserly people. Then he goes on to say, Edhana, Dhana means wealth, Yavan means youth, Putra is son, and Parijana means relatives. So he is questioning what is the use of wealth, youth, and relatives. The Bhagavatam goes on to say that goes very in a very it says that they are like fallible soldiers. So Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Dhalamala. If anyone has ever seen, Kamala means a lotus flower, and Kamala Dala, the leaf of the lotus flower, sometimes it's hydrophobic in nature, and sometimes a bead, a small drop, a bindu of water falls on the leaf. And then because of the action of wind, there are waves on the surface of the lake, and then the the leaf sort of shakes, and on that top of the water drop, that also just keeps moving from here, there, and then gone. So Jivana Thalamala. Thalamala is sort of a phonetic. It's basically Jivana. Our life is tottering like this. So just like the water on the leaf of Kamala, of a lotus. And then Govinda Das, he says, Bhajav Haripadan Itire. So better you worship the lotus feet of Lord Hari. So I remember there was recently this happened in Nepal. There was a crash that killed almost I think around more than 70 people, and there was a video which showed that somebody was trying to live stream, and then just before the moment before it hit the ground, and then it was a sudden change. Nobody expected. There was suddenly um, the engines failed, and then the plane just overturned. And we know in the past of the Titanic. So it was claimed as the ship that would never sink. It's made of hard metal, and on its maiden voyage it sank. So it hit an iceberg, and hundreds of lives were lost, and some of them they could be saved because of lifeboats, and so on and so forth. So we see that the Bhagavatam says, Padam Padam Yad Vipadam Natesham. It says that every step there is a danger. There's a danger at every step. So that's why Govinda Das says, Bhajahu Haripada Nitire. Now, how do you actually do? How do you Bhaja Haripada? How do you worship lotus feet of Krishna? So then he says, this is from the famous verse from the 7th canto, 5th chapter, 23 to 24. Which is spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. There's the 9 processes of devotional service. It starts with Shravan. Shravan means to hear about Krishna. Bhavanti Hitkarna Rasayana Katha. Just like, for example, if one wants to go to Hawaii, for example, and then if one hears about Hawaii, it has turquoise waters or golden sands and so on and so forth. Then I want to go there. And then one goes there, then I don't know, maybe some other place in Thailand or something. So basically, when one hears about some place, one starts to develop a desire. So that's the first thing one hears about Krishna and his abode. Like Krishna says about his abode, he mentions about his abode that Yad Gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. He says that paramam dhama, that supreme abode of mine, when one goes there, one does not return. He says, and that abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or the moon. And we get more information from the Brahma Samhita, which says, Chinta Mani Prakhara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vriteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam. So every stone is like a Chintamani stone in the spiritual world. There are descriptions. And every tree is like a desire tree. And thousands and thousands of Lakshmis are serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead at any given point of time. So all these descriptions about the spiritual world are there. And when we hear about the spiritual world, we get a desire that, okay, we want to go to that spiritual world. In the spiritual world, the time is conspicuous by its absence, that is mentioned. And so the Shravan is hearing about Krishna and his pastimes and about his abode. So everything starts with Shravan. This is the first step. And then Kirtan. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So he says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So by doing this uh, Sankirtan, one actually starts to clear the dust which is accumulated in the heart. So so as one engages in the process of Shravan and Kirtan, one can start to make slow degrees of advancement towards towards life's ultimate goal. The life's ultimate goal is to be a lover of Krishna, lover of God. So then we have then there are other processes. The nine is mentioned about Smaran. Smaran means remembering about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vandana means praying, offering prayers, various kinds of prayers. Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Dasyam, just like Hanumanji served Lord Ram. And Pujana, of, performing deity worship, offering the Lord various kinds of flowers, incense, lamp, and so on and so forth. Sakhijana, worshipping as a friend. And Atma Nivedana, offering everything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we don't have time to go into every one of them. So we can refer to Srimad Bhagavatam 7th chapter, 5th verse, 23 to 24, where Srila Prabhupada has given an enlightening purport explaining about each of these 9 processes of devotional service. And it ends with Govinda Dasa Vilasare. Govinda Das, his desire is to engage in this 9 processes of devotional service. So we'll just briefly sing this verse and then we'll continue. Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana Bhaya Charanara Vindare. Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana Bhaya Charanara Vindare. Durlabha manava janam satsange. Durlabha manava janam satsange. Taro hai e bhava sindhure. Taro ho e bhava sindhure. Sita atapa bata barishana edina jamini jagire. Sita atapa bata barishana edina jamini jagire. Bifale se vinu kripana durjana. Bifale se vinu kripana durjana. Chapala sukhala bala gire. Chapala sukhala bala gire. Edhana yauvana putra parijana. Ite ke ache parati tire. Edhana yauvana putra parijana. Ite ke ache parati tire. Kamala dala jala jivana tala mala. Kamala dala jala jivana tala mala. Bhajahu hari pada nitire. Bhajahu hari pada nitire. Shravana kirtana smarana vandana pada sevana dasyare. Shravana kirtana smarana vandana pada sevana dasyare. Pujana sakhi jana atma nivedana. Pujana sakhi jana atma nivedana. Govinda dasa abhilasare. Govinda dasa abhilasare. Okay. So thank you. So that brings us to today's verse, which is very interesting because we're going to discuss about Abhayam. The verse, the bhajan that we sang just now had specifically this word uh, Abhaya Charanara Vindare. So we'll read this verse and then the purport. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodha Tyaga Shantirapaishunam Daya Bhuteshwalo Lupvam Mardavam Hrera Chapalam Tejah Kshamadrite Saucham Adroha Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Purport. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter, also the devas or godly and the asuras, the ungodly or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for the progress on the path of liberation, and such activities are known as Daivi Prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In this 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. The word abhijatasya in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as garbhadhana samskar. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. In Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned, provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness at least should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so that they may become Krishna conscious after birth. That should be the advantage of children born of a father and mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The social institution known as Varnashrama Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions of social life and 4 occupational divisions or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he can get liberated from the material world. In the Varna Ashrama institution, the sannyasi or the person in the renounced order of life is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders. A Brahmin is considered to be the spiritual master of the 3 other sections of a society, namely the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. But a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the Brahmanas also. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness, because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support. He has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me? He should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, and that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna as Paramatma will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, or fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. So we'll not read the rest of the purport because we wanted to focus on this particular quality of abhayam, which Krishna says, abhayam sattva samshuddhir, the word abhayam. There are actually 26 qualities which Krishna mentions here, the qualities that belong to godly men, these are the godly qualities. Later on in the chapter, we also saw that he's talking about the ungodly qualities also. So out of these 26 qualities, there are some qualities which are for a sannyasi, some qualities for a grihastha, and then so on and so forth as we go further in this verse. But this first quality is this abhayam, this fearlessness. So, so fearlessness can also be of two types. One, so the fearlessness that is mentioned here is that of spiritual fearlessness, the fearlessness that comes when one surrenders completely out of dependence from on when one is dependent on Krishna. So that time one is fear, the abhaya charana ravinda. So that we read in the bhajan today. So that is the fearlessness that is mentioned here. Now the other part of fearlessness that could be considered a material fearlessness is what Krishna talks about in the um, 13 to 15 verses. So this is the other side. It could happen that the demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So there could be some sort of some people who are like daredevils. They're not necessarily surrendering to Krishna, but they can do anything for sense gratification. So it is not that sort of fearlessness that is mentioned here. And for example, somebody could be say, I'm fearless. I don't care about killing animals. I don't care about karma. I don't care about anything. I am fearless. So that is more like carelessness than fearlessness. So the spiritual fearlessness which we are talking about here is we can take one. So the best example, one of the great examples is that of Prahlad Maharaj, who was a saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. So, so we'll just read the summary of this chapter, and as we read, we'll see how Prahlad Maharaj was so fearless. In spite of, he was fearless in his speech, he was fearless in everything. Whatever we'll see, what he has been subjected to, and how he fearlessly faced all of that. The Prahlad Maharaj did not carry out the orders of his teachers, for he was always engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu, as described in this chapter. So Hiranyakashipu was a demon who was terrorizing the universe, and Prahlad Maharaj uh, was a devotee of Nrsingadev. So Hiranyakashipu tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj even by having a snake bite him and by putting him under the feet of elephants, yet he was unsuccessful. Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, Sukracharya, had two sons named Sanda and Amarka, to whom Prahlad Maharaj was entrusted for education. Although the teachers tried to educate the boy Prahlad in politics, economics, and other material activities, he did not care for their instructions. Instead, he continued to be a pure devotee. Prahlad Maharaj never liked the idea of discriminating between one's friends and enemies. Because he was spiritually inclined, he was equal toward everyone. Once upon a time, Hiranyakashipu inquired from his son what the best thing was he had learned from his teachers. Prahlad Maharaj replied that a man engrossed in the material consciousness of duality, thinking this is mine and that belongs to my enemy, should give up his householder life and go to the forest to worship the Supreme Lord. So here we see Hiranyakashipu, he has conquered the entire world, and he has defeated all the demigods, and he's taking the son on his lap and he's asking this question, "Oh, what have you learned?" And he's saying that, you know, just give up such a person like you who is thinking me, mine, and enemy and all this, just forget everything and go to the forest. So that's how strong he was. He was fearless in his statements. And we'll see going further how fearless he was. When Hiranyakashipu heard from his son about devotional service, he decided that this small boy had been polluted by some friend in school. Thus, he advised the teachers to take care of the boy so that he would not become a Krishna conscious devotee. However, when the teachers inquired from Prahlad Maharaj why he was going against the teachings, Prahlad Maharaj taught the teachers that the mentality of ownership is false and that he was therefore trying to become an unalloyed devotee of Lord Vishnu. The teachers, being very angry at this answer, chastised and threatened the boy with many fearful conditions. They taught him to the best of their ability and then brought him before his father. So now Hiranyakashipu is again talking to his son Prahlad. Hiranyakashipu affectionately took his son Prahlad on his lap and then inquired from him what the best thing was that he had learned from his teachers. As usual, Prahlad Maharaj began praising the 9 processes of devotional service, such as Shravanam and Kirtanam. Thus, the king of demons, Hiranyakashipu, being extremely angry, chastised the teachers, Senda and Amarka, for having wrongly trained Prahlad Maharaj. The so-called teachers informed the king that Prahlad Maharaj was automatically a devotee and did not listen to their instructions. When they proved themselves innocent, Hiranyakashipu inquired from Prahlad where he had learned Vishnu Bhakti. Prahlad Maharaj replied that those who are attached to family life do not develop Krishna consciousness, either personally or collectively. Instead, they suffer repeated birth and death in this material world and continue simply chewing the chewed. Prahlad explained that the duty of every man is to take shelter of a pure devotee and thus become eligible to understand Krishna consciousness. And here Prahlad is just a small boy and he is sharing such profound um, uh, tenets of devotional service. So now Hiranyakasipu is completely enraged and he just throws Prahlad Maharaj from the lap and he becomes so angry and then will read. Enraged at this answer, Hiranyakashipu threw Prahlad Maharaj from his lap. Since Prahlad was so treacherous that he had become a devotee of Vishnu who had killed his uncle Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu asked his assistants to kill him. The assistants of Hiranyakashipu struck Prahlad with sharp weapons, threw him under the feet of elephants, subjected him to hellish conditions, threw him from the peak of a mountain, and tried to kill him in thousands of ways, but they were unsuccessful. So the reason they were unsuccessful was Krishna was always there protecting Prahlad Maharaj. And all of these, like throwing them under the feet of elephants or to the peak of a mountain or in whatever ways. So Hiranyakashipu therefore became increasingly afraid of his son Prahlad Maharaj and arrested him. The sons of Hiranyakashipu, spiritual master Sukracharya, began teaching Prahlad in their own way, but Prahlad Maharaj did not accept their instructions. While the teachers were absent from the classroom, Prahlad Maharaj began to preach Krishna consciousness in the school, and by his instructions, all his class friends and the sons of demons became devotees like him. So we see here Prahlad Maharaj, who was taken complete shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, was fearless. The example is given that of a kitten, of a cat. A cat um, with the same mouth, it carries a kitten, and with the same mouth, it carries a mouse. But for the mouse, it is like death personified. But for the kitten, it is like its mother. So it is completely fearless. So similarly, the Lord protects their devotees. So the devotee is completely fearless. So one other point, so coming back to our point of discussion here. So one could say that this quality of fearlessness is supposed to be cultivated by a sannyasi. Not everybody, of course, is a sannyasi. There are other the brahmacharis, grihasthas, and vanaprasthas. So Prabhupada, at the end of the purport, he says that these qualities are specific to some of these ashramas, but also the purport is that each and every one of the others should also cultivate these qualities. Just read that. All these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. So we also see that Arjuna, as an example, was also fearless, and he mentions um, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, after Krishna ended his pastimes here in the material world, um, when he's speaking to Yudhishthir, he says that in the war that took place in Kurukshetra, there were so many different sort of weapons that were thrown on him. There were so many great generals who could kill thousands and thousands of men in one go, and there were Maharathis. There were so many shark-like Maharathis who were in that ocean of Kurukshetra. But Arjuna was able to surpass it all because Krishna was there with him all along, and because he had taken shelter of Krishna. So we see another example of a devotee, Arjuna, who was like fearless. The fearlessness came from Arjuna surrendering to Krishna. So because of the protection that was offered by the Lord. So I just also wanted to read one particular section of more contemporary um, side of devotees who had actually taken shelter of Krishna. So this is from the Journey Within. It's a book written by Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And he narrates a small story of one of the devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and how she was fearless uh, in a devotional service. So I'll just read that. Radhanath Swami Maharaj writes, Linda Jury was born in 1949 to middle-class parents of European descent and brought up in the suburbs of Detroit. In 1969, she found her calling in the practice of Bhakti Yoga and accepted the name Hladini Dasi, which means servant of God's compassionate energy. In the early 1970s, she moved to an old isolated farmhouse in a small community in Appalachian Mountains, where she gave her full heart to serving the Supreme by making offerings on a simple altar. This made her incredibly focused and happy, and her bliss was contagious. People who knew her then say that she always had a radiant smile that seemed to beam out from the beauty of her soul. Despite the austere conditions of that farmhouse, she never complained and never seemed to find time to criticize others. Envy and sectarianism seemed foreign to her awareness. Everyone around her saw that her relationship with God was deeply personal. She loved and served Krishna with the intimacy of a mother for her child. Each day, she cut wood, drew water from a well, and cooked meals over a wood fire. She offered the food on her altar and then to everyone who came. However busy she was, she always found time to help anyone who needed her. Through all this, she spent hours every day, absorbed in meditation on God's names, studying scriptures, and singing Krishna's praises. I first met Ladini in 1972. We had accepted the same Guru, Prabhupada, and she and I were doing the same type of services, she in her farmhouse and me in an ashram for monks on another remote mountain. Through occasional letters, she shared with me her many aspirations. In 1979, I left my mountaintop ashram and began lecturing at American universities and colleges, gradually helping to form devotional communities in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, like an erupting volcano, Ladini could no longer contain the love and joy that filled her life. She longed to share it with others. So she too left her mountain and we often served together. She was magical. Her enthusiasm and gentle compassion conquered the hearts of the people with whom she connected. She loved Krishna in such a sweet, simple way that even people who had no idea who Krishna was or what bhakti was about never wanted to leave her side. I saw many times that when she saw someone connect to the joy of God's grace, she would, from a little distance, beam a radiant smile and cry tears of happiness. Ladini took her first pilgrimage to the holy places in India in the late 1980s. At that time, I was living in India. We traveled together with a few friends to Vrindavan, a holy site for devotees of Krishna. At each sacred place we visited, she seemed to be in trance. After almost 20 years of devotional service, she was thrilled to finally see the places she had been meditating on every day. She rarely spoke on that pilgrimage, but a number of times, struggling to contain her emotions, she said simply, I am grateful. Back in the United States, she heard from her spiritual brother, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, about the suffering of the people in West Africa. To many people's surprise, she decided to go there to help. Soon after her arrival, she was being interviewed by television stations, on the radio, and meeting heads of state. But she spent much of her time in the tribal villages, serving the people, teaching them, and inspiring them to chant God's names. She was especially fond of dancing with the village children. In a photo she sent of herself with a crowd of these people, I saw the same spontaneous smiles on the villagers' faces as I used to see on the American students and families she had touched. A saint once said that where there is the greatest necessity, there is the greatest opportunity to serve. Ladini chose to live in Liberia just when the country was being torn apart by a bloody civil war. Bloodshed and death were everywhere, and eventually over 200,000 civilians were killed. In Monrovia, the capital, where Ladini lived, a third of the people were homeless, and there was mass starvation. Ladini cooked and served meals to the people and helped them find happiness in God's love, even in the midst of such disaster. The desperate people loved her as a mother and saint. Even the savage warlords honored her. When the US Marines ordered all American citizens to evacuate Liberia and sent a fleet of ships to remove them from the war zone, Ladini chose to stay. She later wrote to me that she was not afraid of dying. She only feared offending those who love God. One naive devotee from another place sent Prince Johnson, the leader of the violent coup, a letter asking him to stop the needless killing. Insanely furious, Johnson and his military stormed Ladini's residence late at night and at gunpoint rounded up Ladini and her African students. The group was driven to the bank of a nearby river and lined up to be shot. But then Johnson released Ladini and another woman, saying he would kill only the men. The women were free to go. Johnson was surrounded by aides holding machine guns. As he raised his pistol to murder the 5 men one by one, Ladini knew she could not bear to see her students massacred. She ran over to Johnson and grabbed the arm that held her gun, crying, Do not kill these innocent devotees. She knew she didn't have a chance, but she chose to die rather than do nothing while others were harmed. Bullets filled the body of that gentle, loving woman, while she struggled with him to make him stop. She lay on the ground with names of her beloved Lord on her lips and departed for her eternal home. The young woman who was released with Ladini saw everything and later told one of my friends what had happened. Ladini knew that as an eternal soul, she was beyond the frailties of her body, and she was willing to give up her life to serve those who needed her. She was not given any medals or celebrated as a hero, not in Africa and not in the United States. And she wouldn't have wanted that. She wanted only to be able to serve. I can still almost hear her saying, I am so grateful. Few of us will experience the kind of cruelty persons like Sindhutai and Ladini did. Their lives are extreme examples of people who face the crucible of compassion. We may never be put to such tests, but we can still learn from their examples. Ladini laid down her physical life not only for 5 African students, but for all humanity. She embraced her ideals and lived a life of compassion rather than a life centered on personal concerns. And she felt intimately connected with God when she did. God's ways are mysterious indeed. We often do not see the larger picture and are baffled by apparent injustice. Ladini was naturally blissful. She loved her life in this world and the world she was already beginning to live in beyond this one. What she did at those last moments of her life was natural for her. And I think if she were faced with the same choice today, she would do it again because she truly did love God with all her heart, soul, strength, and mind, and her neighbors as herself. No one is suggesting that we imitate people like Ladini, but in our own lives, at home, in the workplace, and in our social and spiritual circles, we can practice bhakti or pure love as our highest ideal and live that ideal as honestly as we can. Ladini would consider it the glory of her life if even one of us were to do so. So this is so I just wanted to clear up. So one thing, as we see, Radha Swami Maharaj is speaking at the end here. No one is suggesting that we imitate people like Ladini. So there could be degrees of fearlessness depending on um, how much somebody has developed one's faith or surrendered, to the degree somebody has surrendered to the lotus feet of Krishna, to that degree, to the degree that I and mine is gone, aham mamadi, or everything surrounding my body and myself. So to that degree, one will be able to surrender to Krishna, and to that degree, the fearlessness based on dependence on Krishna will develop. So it's also recommended by Krishna in the Bhagavatam. He says to Uddhav, Sweshwa Adhikarya Nishtasa Gunan Parikirtida. He says that one should act based on one's adhikar. So similarly, one should not just try to just simply imitate great devotees who have really surrendered themselves to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the same time, even if someone does even a small amount of devotional service, says Neha Vikramana Sosti, as you were alluding before, Neha Vikramana Sosti Pratyavayana Vidyate, Salpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little bit of devotional service, if someone does in this lifetime, it gives immense results. And contrary to any material effort that one would do, the spiritual effort that one would do goes on, the continues on to this lifetime after lifetime, and till one is able to perfect one's life and then go back home, back to Godhead. So there is much more that we can speak on this topic, but at this point, we'd just like to pause and see if there are any reflections or any comments. Ashramada Prabhu.
Prabhu, there is a question online. I'll just read it to you.
Okay.
This is from Sivam Srivastav Prabhu. Why are some people with demoniac qualities also materially successful and some people with divine qualities struggling? It creates confusion whether developing divine qualities actually helps.
Very, very good question. So we have to first understand. So Kunti Maharani actually says um, that good birth, wealth, honor, prestige, and so on and so forth, that they're actually disqualifications for spiritual life. Um, in fact, Kunti Maharani asks for more and more um, calamities to come in her life. I mean, Kunti Maharani is a Mahabhagavad, she's situated on the highest platform of devotional service. So the reason she's asking is because this conversation happens when Krishna is going back to Dwarka after everything has happened. And Kunti Maharani is remembering that all those times that they were put, and the Pandavas, they were put into so much difficulties, that Krishna was always there to protect them. And they would never forget Krishna. So, uh, so whenever there were instances where they didn't know what to do, they just remembered. Draupadi was in the Asat Sabha, and she didn't know what to do. She just remembered Krishna, and Krishna supplied her with unlimited amount of saris. So the quality of a devotee is to take shelter of Krishna. Actually, more wealth and fame, prestige, and all these things are actually seen by devotee as sort of a disqualification rather than a qualification. So on the other hand, we see that it's sometimes seen that the worshippers of Lord Hari, they do not have a lot of wealth, or they do not have, whereas the worshippers of Lord Shiva, they have all, if somebody worships Lord Shiva, they get all sorts of material comforts and so on and so forth. The reason is because Krishna, he does not give something to a devotee which is detrimental. It's not to say that devotee, like for example, we have Ambarish Maharaj, who was a king. He had all the opulences, and then so on and so forth. We have many examples like that. So they are a gift from the Supreme Lord. But Krishna is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. He says that he does not give something to a devotee um, which will make him not come closer to Krishna, not make him. So the basic principle is, one needs to understand that one is in this cycle of birth and death, and to get out of it is the main necessity. So Krishna will give us, like, if somebody has any desire to serve Krishna, to for any sort of sense gratification, it's better to go to Krishna, because if you go to Krishna, then Krishna will give us it in a way that um, the desire for that also goes away. Whereas if one goes to other demigods, for example, then the desire still remains. The desire to for honor, the desire for fame, all of that still remains, and the net result is that binds us more into the material world. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the 15th chapter, 20th verse, the reason one is in the material world. The first reason is one wanted to lord it over the material nature. And when one actually engages in the activity of lording it over the material nature, the desire to lord it over becomes even more entrenched. So, so what is more important for a devotees, from a devotee perspective, um, is to purify our desires to purify them for and keep Krishna in the center, to bring Krishna to our heart. Um, so Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said. So when we follow this process of Shravana, Kirtana, and all the other 9 devotional processes, these our heart becomes cleansed, and when our heart becomes cleansed, then then one is really ripe to take to devotional service. There is a in the fight between Indra and Vritarashura, Vritarashura. So that time in that fight, um, it's actually Indra, after winning the war, he's going to get the entire heavenly kingdom, and Vritarashura is going to go back to Godhead. So Vritarashura is saying, "Hey Indra, why are you waiting? Just go, come on, kill me," because Vritarashura was a devotee, and uh, so Indra is going to rot in this material world for generations, for lifetimes, whereas Vritarashura is going back home, back to Godhead. So if you see on the bigger picture, it's actually what we are getting, coming out of the cycle of birth and death is more important um, uh, than let's say uh, being in the material world and having even if somebody has let's say musk type of money, and then what about the next lifetime? What is one creating for the next lifetime? And then next, and then next, and then next. So one is caught in this cycle of birth and deaths, whereas a devotee, um, he for him, he's going to go back to Godhead after this lifetime, if he's able to perfect his lifetime. And even if he's not, that is going to carry on. There's nothing lost. Any devotional service they are doing, whatever we do, is carried on in the next lifetime as well. So that was a long, I think, answer to that. Uh,
There is a there is a okay. So there is a from Apara Gaurangi Mataji. There is a that we read this purport. She is
mm.
mentioning a verse.
Sorry,
So
can you say that again, Prabhu?
Apara Gaurangi Mataji is saying that if we can read this purport from Srimad Bhagavatam 4.9.19, that is
Okay.
regarding the Lord fulfilling Dhruv Maharaj's desire of having a kingdom greater than that of Brahma. So there is a purport there, it seems. That's what she's saying.
Okay. So we'll go to 4.9.19. Okay. The Lord is so merciful to his devotee that he immediately said to Dhruva Maharaj, "Let there be all good fortune for you." The fact is that Dhruva Maharaj was very much afraid in his mind, for he had aspired after material benefit in discharging his devotional service, and that was hampering him from reaching the stage of love of God. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.44, it is said, Bhogeshwarya Prasaktanam, those who are addicted to material pleasure cannot be attracted to devotional service. It was true that at heart Dhruva Maharaj wanted a kingdom that would be far better than Brahmaloka. This was a natural desire for a Kshatriya. He was also only 5 years old, and in his childish way, he desired to have a kingdom far greater than his father's, grandfather's, or great grandfather's. His father, Uttanapad, was the son of Manu, and Manu was the son of Lord Brahma. Dhruva wanted to excel all these great family members. The Lord knew Dhruva Maharaj's childish ambition, but how was it possible to offer Dhruva a position more exalted than Lord Brahma's? The Lord assured Dhruva Maharaj that Dhruva would not be bereft of the Lord's love. He encouraged Dhruva not to be worried that he childishly had material desires and at the same time had the pure aspiration to be a great devotee. Generally, the Lord does not award a pure devotee material opulence, even though he may desire it. But Dhruva Maharaj's case was different. The Lord knew that he was such a great devotee that in spite of having material opulence, he would never be deviated from the love of God. This example illustrates that a highly qualified devotee can have the facility of material enjoyment and at the same time execute love of God. This, however, was a special case for Dhruva Maharaj. Thank you. This is like bullseye. This really uh, hits that point regarding the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Antariksha Prabhu. I was also thinking of another point is that is mentioned that I think it is mentioned that in Satyuga, the demons, the demoniac nature is only in demons, and the divine nature is in the godly people, and they are in different planets, right? In Treta Yuga, they are in different nations, right? Like Ravan and Lord Ram. And then in Dwapar Yuga, they are in different families, basically, right? Kauravas and Pandavas. In Kali Yuga, every person has, generally speaking. I mean, there are, of course, transcendental souls like Prabhupada and everyone that came. But generally speaking, it's a mix of divine and demoniac nature, right? Nityananda Prabhu says that to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brings the Sudarshan Chakra to kill Jagai and Madhai. He says, if you do that, then you'll have to kill almost everyone, basically, in Kali Yuga, because everyone has this problem. Whom will you kill? So you say different strategies is required, right? Divine and demoniac. So this particular chapter is actually very pertinent for Kali Yuga. And I think towards the end, Krishna is saying, if you want to relieve yourself from the demoniac nature, you cannot through mental speculation, you cannot decide what is right, what is wrong. You have to depend on scriptures,
right?
The essence of the scriptures, what the essence of the scriptures say about what is right and what is wrong, right? And then you have to choose the right path.
Yeah,
right? There,
yeah.
I think spiritual masters and the association of devotees, they have, and what is right, what is wrong, ultimately is depend on that principle, right? On the 18th chapter, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, Mamekam Saranam Raja, right? So Krishna, 5,000 years back, he left this world. So what we have now is his reflections, the spiritual master, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, that's what we have
Right.
for guidance. That's what I was reflecting on, how this chapter is very pertinent for Kali Yuga, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Nice reflections. Apar Gorangi has her hand up.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I was
Krishna.
just reflecting on the question Shivam Prabhu asked. I don't remember the exact reference, but I think Prabhupada was giving an example how in the history of our planet, There's so many kings who fought for kingdom and they won the kingdom also. But where are they now? Are they there enjoying the kingdom? So if we just use our intelligence to analyze that, even though someone who may not be from a devotional background and may have a lot of material opulence, how long can that person actually maintain that opulence, or how long can the person enjoy it? Like, even if he or she has a very long lifespan, at the end of it, they have to leave the body and go to the next one. So even though if we have from a broader vision, it might actually look like it's a loss, or it might not be really a gain to have some kind of a material opulence. Because what is the point of having a lot of material opulence if the soul is not even able to get a human body and glides down to an animal body, compared to someone who may not have a material opulence, so to say, but may actually be able to go back to the spiritual world. So if you really analyze and see from the perspective of long term and have a broader vision, what might look like success may not really be a success, and what might look like an apparent failure may not be failure. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, very nicely put. Thank you. We got a few minutes. Like, should we read maybe a passage or two from Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav?
Oh, sure, Prabhu.
Yeah, because
And you can if it takes you like 3-4 minutes or 5-6 minutes beyond, don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Prabhu. I'll just read maybe one page of just because to honor Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his appearance day is coming. So,
Yeah.
okay, so this is from the Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. It's written by Bhaktivikas Swami Maharaj. So I'm reading page 7, the childhood and youth, from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's biography. Bimala Prasad was 5 months old at the time of Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra, an annual festival attracting lakhs of pilgrims. Bimal Prasad is also another name of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His father's house was situated along the parade route on Grand Road. Although the procession usually finishes in a few hours, this time Lord Jagannath's cart stopped for 3 days outside the home of his dear devotee Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. During that period, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur arranged for a continuous Sankirtan festival for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. Taking advantage of the auspicious opportunity, he directed his wife to bring her baby to the cart. Upon being placed at the lotus feet of Jagannath, the infant reached out his tiny arms to touch the feet of the deity. Lord Jagannath immediately reciprocated by offering his own garland, which fell from his body and encircled the child. That same day, Bimal Prasad's Annaprasan, which is function of eating grains for the first time, was conducted with Jagannath Mahaprasad. Also performed was the traditional ceremony of placing the baby amid various objects such as rice paddy, money, and scriptures to see which one he will clasp as indicative of his future vocational propensity. The child's spontaneous grasping of Srimad Bhagavatam further intimated his devotional inclination. From the wonderful happening on Lord Jagannath's cart, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur realized that this child was Lord Chaitanya's answer to his prayer for an empowered soul to help in his mission. He thus resolved to specially care for his son and from the beginning trained him in pure devotional service. When Bimal Prasad was 10 months old, his mother brought him by palanquin to Ranaghat in Nadia district, Bengal, where he spent his early years. Bimala was not more than 4 years old when an incident occurred that foretold the character of this future Acharya. He took a mango before it had been offered to the family Govardhan Shila, for which Bhaktivinoda Thakur rebuked him. All food is to be enjoyed by the Lord. Nothing should be taken unless first offered to Krishna. You have committed a serious offense. The child became greatly contrite and immediately vowed to never again eat mangoes. In later years, after he had become an acknowledged spiritual leader, he was often offered mangoes, but he always refused, saying, I am an offender, and quoted, Isavasam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat Tena tyaktena bhunjita ma grida kasva svedhanam. Everything within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. Therefore, one should accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ashramada Prabhu, I think we are on the top of the hour.
Finished it
So,
in yeah.
so should we end here or?
Yeah, I was just trying to say that Bhakti Siddhanta, from Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, we can get inspired. Of course, we can never imitate, but we can always get imitate about, whatever vow you take, right? Like he took a vow that he will never take a mango, and mango is among the fruits, it's called the king of fruits, right? It's very delicious. It's very hard to resist mango, basically.
Srila Prabhupada's favorite.
Yeah, but he did not take mango throughout the life. Same thing about his brahmacharya life, right?
Yeah.
So that is one thing we can learn from his life, basically, how to be determined.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so thank you so much for your patient listening, and we will end the session today. And please tune in on Saturday for our next edition from ISKCON of Silicon Valley on Saturday morning, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Vansha
Prabhu ki jai.
Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvya vicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, we'll end the session now.